Everybody has their own form of magic they believe in. You either believe that God did it, or you believe that the universe, whatever that term means, because you could think of the term universe in a couple of different ways, but generally, you either believe God did it, or you believe that the universe came into existence through some form of it just popping out of nowhere or out of nothingness. And you'd have to define that, but I would end up digressing so far I wouldn't get to the point of this video. And this is going to be a very controversial statement, but it's what I theorize will eventually lead us to the proper recognition of our place within the cosmos. I think that we've gotten God wrong in the last couple thousand years. I think that religion has not done us any real favors overall in the grand picture of coming to know God personally in our communities and in a real global sense. And here's why. God, in its definition, is beyond knowing. It is something to have faith in or believe in without ever having the real facts. Something that is an omniscient, omnipresent being or source can't be known if God is outside the universe. And if God is the universe, then we are dissociated from that source, and also we cannot just know it. There's many, many explanations philosophically and psychologically and scientifically for this. However, what I hypothesize on my own based on what I've learned, and I try to know God in my own way, I'm not acting out as an atheist here. At one time I was, and I had this 100% fervent dogmatic belief that I was right, that physicists had been studying the correct path towards enlightenment. And then I realized in my own research and searching and reading and trying to figure out what life is, that I felt wrong, that I felt there was an emptiness when all of the paths led back to something called the Big Bang. And quantum mechanics is too mysterious to really understand because it seems to contradict itself in this deterministic path versus subatomic particles that have choice in what they become when they're measured or observed. So I've come to believe, if you will, that ultimately what we will learn is that God is the consciousness of the universe and we are manifested from it. And that doesn't negate the sensation that God is a whisper inside you, that there is some sort of transcendent knowledge and understanding and intelligence in the universe. What it negates is the human story. And that's a hard pill to swallow. It really is. Because what it does is it simply ends up trampling on thousands of years of people's belief in an almighty presence. You know, the thing in the clouds, the man with the beard. People think of God in their own way. Sometimes in a beautiful way, sometimes in a malevolent way, and some people just say in a nihilistic sort of sense that they're satisfied that there is nothing. And I'm not making a claim about heaven or hell here either, because I can't possibly know. Honestly, even in my way of trying to understand and know God, there's no way that I can even know. It doesn't seem like there is a hell to me, honestly. And it seems like heaven is a different place. It's like a place where you are no longer dissociated from source and you go back to an original energy. I've had my own psychedelic and transcendent experiences through meditation where I have seen and felt certain things that are beyond what is reality as I'm speaking to this cell phone. These are experiences and understandings that defy words, but that put some form of insistent idea in my mind, if you will, that there is something greater. And the universe appears to must have differential borders at every scale in order that we are not just a cosmic homogeneous soup. And what I mean by that, if the universe was the Big Bang and there was an infinitesimally tiny point, a 0 point of source that carried all of the weight and the energy of the entire universe, and it finally expanded outwards in some way that scientists have yet to define, I don't necessarily think that it can just be a blind engineer. I think that there must be a dissociation of every single little pixelated particle. There must be a boundary, a conscious boundary between every subatomic particle, every Planck unit, every pixel of the infinity that is the universe, that is the thing we call our cosmos. Or else how could anything know what it could be or what it should be? So imagine that an infinitesimally small, infinitely dense 0 point source you would call a homogeneous thing, a single thing. Imagine that it splits into two right at the inception of the creation of the universe, when we go from nothing, no thing at all, something that defies our language in every possible way, finally bursts forth. And at the very inception, before there's even time, at the very beginning of what you would call a time scale at all, is a bifurcation of the 0 point into 2 points. Mathematically, I don't know what that means, but how would one point from the other point not be homogeneous? How can they know each other so that they could become this, right? Look around you. We have differentiation. We have borders around all of the energy things that we think are solid mass, even though they are actually only energy, with electrostatic charges that give borders and allow for density and weight and mass and all the other fun physical things that we have in our sciences. And in this way, I think what we will eventually find, or what we will discover as humans if we don't destroy ourselves in our own egotistical bullshit, is that this differentiation between every little Planck unit, every little pixel of the universe, this little mini border, is ultimately the fundamental consciousness that we are all searching for, and that we are a dissociated boundary of it. And yet we are still part of it. And the only way to experience, though I can't even begin to understand or recognize how it would come to be other than fractal patterning of some kind, that there is a buildup from the quantum state to the classical state that we live in, there must be borders. There must be some intelligence built into it all. At every single level, the most fundamental thing should probably be a form of consciousness, not the consciousness we experience right now per se as a human being, which is very complex and multifaceted, but a consciousness nonetheless that tells every bordering neighbor, every Planck unit, every pixel, that it tells itself from its partners around it. Otherwise it would be a homogeneity, and it would just be a soup of the same thing. So in this way, it's why I think we've gotten God wrong, because I believe that God is the universe. And then humans came along as we evolved, and we began to tell stories once we developed language. And we had to tell stories. How else could we ever understand what we were feeling and sensing? From within our unconscious came these sensations and these symbols and this mythology of what are we? And we had to tell them. And then a few self-righteous, scary individuals over the course of human history that were also very intelligent, save for one or two maybe, one that we call Jesus and a couple others that we have names for. Most others have taken this internal guiding spirit, this unknown source, this whisper inside us, and turned it into something that just is false completely. And this is just my hypothesis and what I've come to believe about the universe and about our state of affairs and how we fit into the picture and what it means to be human and understand God and know what we are. That's why I think religion has got it wrong in so many ways, because we've dressed up God in human clothing, and we've mistaken our own self-righteous piety for a far deeper transcendent truth that we have yet to know, because we refuse to open our eyes and let go of fairy tales and start recognizing our connection to all things. Thanks.